So welcome once again. Tonight is kind of a sidebar of astronomy. We'll talk about streaming services. Yeah, those TV, video, entertainment streaming services. The tie to astronomy is this is how you watch NASA YouTube TV. This is how you watch SpaceX launches. So you need to know some of the basics, but we'll get deep into the minutia of what these things are. I did one of these presentations a couple of years ago, and people seemed to like it. That was cord cutting 1.0. We're now in cord cutting version 2.0. So some things have changed. When we changed the observatory over from, dedicated phone lines and dedicated internet lines and subscribe to 4G wireless internet, and then use video services like YouTube for showing NASA videos and such. So this is kind of a next generation of that. So as I said, there was cord cutting version 1.0. We're now in cord cutting 2.0. Because I'm a techie, geeky kind of guy, people will often ask me about streaming services and what do I use and how do I do this? How do I make my monthly costs go down? And I said, okay, I can talk about that. And recently there's been some mergers and acquisitions. So I waited a bit for the dust to settle in that before I concluded this. So I'm getting 0 endorsements. So nobody's paying me to make my opinion statements regarding particular companies or service providers or whatever. My opinion and my things that I subscribe to, I would say that's different than other people. Trying to find out what you want to watch and how you would watch it, that there's a deep rabbit hole there. Be prepared to spend time looking for what you want to watch. Content and licensing rights, the best way to describe it is dogs and cats living together. Yeah, but this company produced it, but why is it on that channel? Because they have distribution rights for the next 2 years that they paid for. So yeah, things cross. I recommend if you're interested in cord cutting, getting off of cable TV or getting off of satellite TV to do some homework, take a look at things. There is publicly available information. If you have any questions, obviously you can just shoot me an email. Walk through the data first, find out what works best for you. If you're doing it via pencil and paper, or you can use Excel or something like that, just make yourself a spreadsheet of what things you watch, how you get it, the before price, the after price, and then judge what's best for you. And towards the end, we'll talk about these strikes by writers and potentially for actors and how that all figures into this, because it does. Okay, you won't find like pictures and video snippets and video clips and stuff like that in this presentation because copyrights and registered trademarks. So I tend to stay away from that stuff in these kinds of presentations because I'm, blowing away the smoke, and maybe there's people that don't appreciate me doing that. So just be advised. If you see corporate names, it's their property with no affiliation to Broward Astronomy.
Right.
Now, once I post this, will YouTube, which is owned by Google, take it down? I don't know. I'm not disparaging any particular persons or corporations. I'm just, what I see is what I'm explaining. So I will record it, edit it, clean it up, and then put it out on YouTube, and we'll see how the spaghetti sticks on the wall. If it gets taken down, that's YouTube. If somebody wants a copy of it, obviously I can just, forward you a copy of it. If I get a legal notice for cease and desist, I will gladly take it down or do whatever they ask me to do, because I don't have the burnable income to wage a war against corporations with large legal staff and infinite pockets. So if you think about the good old days, back in the days of broadcast TV, where we had commercials, you had a limited number of network TV channels, the 3-letter acronyms, with local affiliates, the resellers of content and such. And you could look forward to a TV series having roughly 20 or so episodes per year, and they would run for as many years as they could get advertising revenue for them. So, how many years was Gunsmoke on? Yeah, same kind of thing. And in some people's homes, they had survey boxes that you could do analysis and say, what channel did you watch for, how many days at what, how many hours at what time of day? And they would have surveys, and that would be the mechanism for a TV channel to realize that their investment was well spent. Things have changed since then. Enter cable and satellite. This is before cord cutting 1.0. You pay your package fee, you get stuff. Stuff is basic channels with commercials. You might get a couple of premium channels, no commercials, as kind of a sweetener to the package deal. And then, you want that additional premium channel. Well, each one of the additional premium channels would cost you $5 to $16 more a month for every one of them you want. So you could very quickly rack up a couple of $100 per month in just service fees.
Yeah.
But they would have so many base subscribers that the basic channels actually were receiving individually such a small piece of the action, but collectively over millions of subscribers, they would have enough money to create their own content. Think of all the B movies that the Sci-Fi Channel produced when their subscriber count as a basic cable channel finally got large enough and they had, $1 million+ a month to spend on shark movies. But what it wound up with is, you'd get 200 channels and you were only watching 6 of them. So people didn't perceive they were getting good value. But the monthly fee you were paying would still go up. It would go up from like $5 a month to $10 a month for your premium channels. And you didn't see anything extra as a result of that. So there was dissatisfaction with the content for the money spent. And the in-home cable and satellite boxes could actually be used as a means of saying, what are people watching? So the cable and satellite companies could say, hey, this premium channel is only being watched by this many millions of people in these hours. So they were using that as their ad revenue return on investment. But the companies that were providing you the services, not the content providers, but the service providers, had to report back, and the content providers had to pay for that analysis. So they weren't happy with that. So enter cord cutting 1.0. You still had cable and satellite, but there were these other things, these other companies that started to offer package-based viewing, and you didn't have to have a cable connection. You didn't have to have a satellite connection. You could have, a DSL internet connection, and you could watch streaming channels, because one copy of the streaming app, you're only watching one program at a time. So you didn't need, multi-hundred megabits worth of bandwidth. You needed maybe 6 megabits, and that was fine. You paid for whatever content you wanted, whatever packaging you wanted to get, whatever discounts you wanted to get. That was up to the consumer. The distributors would license their content based upon, the streaming services that were available. There was lots of revenue collectively available for new content. But instead of having, 20 episodes a season, you might have 12 episodes a season. But because they had the money, they could have noteworthy actors. You could watch like your favorite actors doing interesting programs, and they would do it for a few seasons. And the popularity of the programs are being confirmed by the streaming apps themselves. So the content providers no longer had to pay the cable or satellite service providers to find out what the actual return on investment of their created content was. So that was 1.0. Now we get to 2.0, and all those streaming companies inflated themselves tremendously. They were spending $1 billion a year on creating unique and interesting content. And as viewers would move from one streaming app to another, you would have floaty monthly revenues. And sometimes a streaming company, because they didn't have any new, fresh content that somebody wanted to watch, they would suddenly find themselves losing millions of dollars as people stopped subscribing. So they would raise monthly fees and create tiers. Here's our cheap per month, here's our expensive per month. And then once the content was created, where do you show it? Do you show it only on your streaming service? Do you show it on competitive streaming services for a license fee? Or do you show it in theaters? A lot of things go to theaters, and when they find out they don't get enough theater audience, they flip it over to their also owned streaming service in order to watch it. But they're using that as a draw to increase subscriber count. But after they spent all these billions of dollars, now they're like, how do we get back to the darker bottom line than red? So they're cutting back, they're folding in services, they're selling things off.
Yeah.
And you have tiers. The latest tier is, do you want to watch the streaming channel in 4K? So they'll charge you extra money to watch it in 4K. Got to maximize all those individual subscriber revenues. But you probably have noticed that they're reducing the number of episodes of programs per season. 4, 6, 8, 10 is a lot of episodes per season now. And not so big name actors, kind of like B tier and later actors, and they're not paying for all the good writers anymore. So you have content just for the sake of having content to draw eyeballs to the streaming service. And you have probably noticed that content moves from one streaming service to another. Hey, I used to watch that program on this streaming service that I pay a monthly fee for, and that's the only reason I do that. And now I moved to a different streaming service. I need to cancel that and pay for this one. But consumers are now free to change or add their streaming services based upon whatever content they want to watch. And that creates instability in the streaming companies. But it's now up to you to make sure that you're getting the best bang for the buck out of your content. But that also means that if you're getting your internet service via, let's say, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, you're not on Comcast cable or AT&T DirecTV satellite. So their revenues are in decline. But now that everything's broken down into individual streaming apps, you now have the content providers and distributors doing their own analytics and return on investment analysis based upon the app that you're watching it on. So if you want to do the analysis, start with what you want to watch. Pick the programs, not necessarily the services you watch it on. Pick the program you want to watch, the kind of things. Do you want to watch sci-fi, technical, educational, historical? Do you want to watch, as I refer to it, mental pablum, old movies, old programs, spy stories, crime dramas, just something to distract you. And then once you know what you want to watch, then find out how you want to watch it. At least for a time, there will still be free broadcast content you can watch via antenna, and that may be from the same companies that are putting content on streaming services. But unless you have a good antenna, digital reception is not that great anymore. There's a new standard you probably heard of in the US. Digital TV is called ATSC. And then there was a version 2.0 that came out. Now there's a version 3.0 that came out that allows them to have encryption. So you would have to pay for a license to receive certain digital channels from broadcast television that would otherwise in the past have been free. So they're trying to milk it for all the money they can get. Here's a shock to the system, so to speak. You're watching a particular streaming channel and you paid for a particular movie that you want to watch again and again. You paid, $10, $20, whatever. And you said, I now own that title and I can watch it whenever I want. No, you can't, because the company that provided you access to that title had that title under license contract. when the contract expires, even though you paid for that, your access to that content goes away, and you may have to jump to a different streaming service to watch the content you thought you had already paid for. So if you really want content that you can watch again and again, stick to something that is pre-recorded media. Get yourself a nice Blu-ray of it, and then a Blu-ray player, and you can watch it whenever you want to watch it, and nobody's going to jerk the rug from out from underneath you. So pick what you want to watch, find how you want to watch it on the service you want to see it on, and then, that will be how you watch it. Now, you can watch it when they put it out there for you to watch it, or you can come by later and watch it on demand. You can say, hey, look, that's in the catalog. I can go watch that right now. So you can watch it on demand. That used to be a trademark. Now it's not anymore. And then you have package services. Cables and satellites used to do this. You'd have basic, add-on channels, and then premium. The new approach is streaming services will give you a tier of free with commercials, possibly low monthly paid service with maybe a few commercials, higher monthly paid service with no commercials, but it's in standard definition. The resolution is SD or HD. And if you pay more, you can get it in 4K with no commercials. And if you pay an annual lump sum of money instead of per month, you can actually get maybe a 10% discount off of your annual total. So do look at the service offerings and see what's available. And I don't think this is going to last much longer. The likes of AT&T and Verizon and T-Mobile would give you access to certain streaming services for no additional fee. Okay, when AT&T owned HBO and DirecTV, it was really easy for them to give you free HBO and free DirecTV because they own the whole conglomerate. Now that they've divested themselves of those sorts of things, I think that you're probably going to find that going away. So there's basically two classes of content. I've got three up here, but it's it goes from tier to tier to tier. There's first run stuff. This is when it first becomes available. They just finish producing it and they release it. They can release it a la Amazon or Netflix all at once. You'll see all 8 episodes or 10 episodes dumped on the streaming service all at once. And if you're like me and you really like the content, on a weekend, you might binge the entire season and go, now what do I watch for the next 11 months? Or they'll release it in groups or clusters. You'll see like the first 2 or 4 episodes just to get you hooked. And then you'll have to wait week to week to see the next episodes, or they'll show you 4 and then the next 4, and then that's the end of the season. Or some will show it episodic. If you want to watch something that's a serial crime drama on a particular streaming service, you may only get to see 1 episode per week and have to wait until that particular day of the week when they release the next week's episode.
Yeah. Hijack.
And if all of a sudden they no longer offer what you were watching or what you want to watch, cancel that streaming service, get a different one, or follow the program. You want to watch a program? The program just moved from this streaming service to this streaming service. So kick those guys to the curb, subscribe to this one. But that means that your monthly fee that you pay for streaming services is going to be floating.
Yeah.
And then there are the free channels and other channels that will show you reruns. And if you're into older programs, you can watch reruns. And if the reruns are on a free service, you can watch them at no cost. If they're on a regular service, you may find that reruns don't cost you anything per month, or a small fee per month with commercials. But if you want to watch the latest season, that costs you a monthly fee. So who creates the content versus where to watch it? Here's where it gets complicated. In order to create content where there's millions of dollars to create that content, you're going to find that there are production companies that are corporations that will highly reimburse the writers, directors, actors. Actors you'll often see listed as executive producers. This is so that their salary for the programs is not as high, but they get a pinch of the back end action. So when you see your favorite actor is all of a sudden executive producer, that's just another way of saying bonus money on the side, salary lower. But if you see executive producer and you see the initials PGA after it, that's the professional guild of producers, and they will only allow you to use the PGA initials, having nothing to do with golf courses. They only allow you to use the PGA initials. Should you solicit it, or should they ask you, do you want it? And then they have to approve it. But it means you as executive producer have to actually have sort of an iron in the fire doing something. So the production company is the one actually getting it done. Then you have releasing companies that make the content available first run to the initial consumers. And then once that's done, you have distribution. You'll see releasing or distribution companies that they're the ones that put it in the theaters. They're the ones that, burn it to media, and they're the ones that offer the first run streaming or the repeats. So you have all these different levels of, the money comes in, it gets created, gets produced, and then it gets distributed. So if you're looking for a particular program, you have a favorite program you like to watch, scratch below the surface, find out where it's coming from, who's distributing it. That will tell you where it's going to show up first run, and then maybe where it'll show up in reruns. I have to expose the corporate hierarchy food chains. So some of the corporations that create content don't have their own streaming services, or they do have their own streaming services. And you'll find that there is a healthy food chain as you get to the bigger and bigger ones. So you might have heard of Peacock as a streaming service owned by NBC. Sounds good. Who owns NBC? NBC Universal, the same company that also owns USA Networks and the Golf Channel. And they're all owned by Comcast, the cable TV company. So if you want to watch Peacock and you have Comcast cable, you might be able to watch Peacock with commercials for no additional cost, or for a small fee to your Comcast bill, you can watch Peacock with no commercials. But now if you want to watch Peacock not over Comcast cable, but over your internet connection, you may get different programs for free with commercials than on the cable. So it's just a giant formula. Although these are giant corporations, they have different tiers and the finances have to flow appropriately. So Comcast actually has to pay its Peacock arm for the content that they're providing on the Comcast cable.
Yeah.
It's money changing hands internally. So whatever tier they set up, if they're going to offer it externally, like the Peacock streaming service is offered externally to Comcast networking, they have to have a definition, a contract that says how the money exchanges hands, even though it's going from left hand to right hand. And that may be why, well, you've got to wait for this to expire or cancel this before you can do that. So it just business. So Disney's, in the streaming wars, Disney gobbled up a number of things that people may not have been aware of. If you remember the old Walt Disney World TV show that was on ABC television network. Well, ABC got acquired by Disney a long time ago, but people don't think about that. There are people that still think that Pixar is owned by Apple. No, Disney bought that from Apple. National Geographic. Oh, you thought there was a National Geographic channel that was separate. Nope, Nat Geo is owned by Disney. How about ESPN, the sports network? That's owned by Disney. The production company Disney Studios, they produce things and they distribute them. How about, I'm a fan of Star Wars. That's Lucasfilms, right? Lucasfilms was acquired by Disney. So Marvel has their own studios that were acquired by Disney, but there's a piece of that action that's still Fox, and there's a piece of that action that's still Sony, because they share in the ownership. So sometimes it's not wholly owned, it's like a partially owned conglomerate subsidiary. And then Fox TV, well, Fox Network has nothing to do with Disney. That's kind of correct. Fox TV and the movie production company is owned by Disney, but Fox News is a different company.
Yeah.
And Disney does own a good chunk of Hulu. And the other owner of Hulu is Fox. But they'd rather not, be burdened with that anymore. And Disney is hinting that, well, maybe we'll just move all our content that is Disney content on Hulu over to the Disney Plus streaming service to get more people there. And then we'll just, cut Hulu. So if you're a Hulu subscriber, keep an eye out. If you want to watch something whenever you want to watch it throughout history, go get yourself a Blu-ray of it.
Yeah, I have to.
Yeah. So how many people are aware that Amazon bought MGM and that this new streaming channel called MGM Plus is literally Amazon at a cheaper rate? It's Amazon Prime at a cheaper rate. The reason why Amazon bought MGM is for the James Bond content. You can license that to other streaming services and make lots of money off of it. And that's what they'd like to do. But they didn't realize that initially. Oh, when you bought MGM, you also got a number of other things, including all the Stargate TV series and the movies. So you got Stargate SG-1, Atlantis, and Universe. Well, that stuff that used to go through Showtime, which is owned by Paramount, Viacom. So how did they get that? Well, they're no longer going to have access to it. So it's going to be moved from there when the contract expires and show up only on MGM Plus or maybe Amazon. How about this one? Everybody thinks of Apple Plus as something that Apple owns and creates content. And there is a thing called Apple Studios, but Apple Studios isn't a major production company. They actually farm all that stuff out, and they have other companies under license create the content. So you may be enjoying watching a particular program on Apple Plus, and then when the contract expires, hey, why is it on Paramount now? Because it was originally created by Paramount and licensed to Apple.
Yeah.
So you don't know your players without a program. So I followed one of these things, and one of the companies you may see in credits a lot is something called Skydance. And
Yes.
Skydance is behind things like, Mission Impossible and Jack Ryan and a lot of that stuff. But Skydance was originally a funding source that then became a production company. And there's a lot of noteworthy underlying production companies. You may hear of Skydance and Bad Robot and Berlanti and Marv and Imagine. These are just the guys that, pull together everything, make some content, and then give it to whoever owns the content to do something. So once the program goes into syndication, it's not first run, it's reruns now. Where it shows up is whoever owns the production rights of it. So this is the last, fourth and final season of Jack Ryan on Amazon. Once that ends on Amazon, it might, because it's a Skydance financed and a Paramount produced program, it may disappear from Amazon a year or two from now and show up only on Paramount Plus. But you don't know, because Paramount also owns Pluto. So if they want to make it available for free, it'll show up on Pluto. But if they want to make some licensing money off of it because it was popular, Paramount may license it off of Amazon over to Netflix. So yeah, you got to watch it. And the one I'm really waiting to see what happens is Blacklist, because Blacklist is currently available on Netflix, but the older seasons, the current season is only available on Peacock. And it's probably going to go from free Peacock, because that's on NBC broadcast TV, to Peacock you got to pay monthly, in which case I'll flip over to paying monthly for Peacock, because I've got other things I'm going to be getting rid of. So here's some food change you might not be aware of. So in addition to Skydance, which I mentioned, Skydance moved from just providing the money, return on investment, slice of the pie, to hey, why don't we make our own content? So Skydance now has its own production company, and they create content for other names that should have their own production companies, like Paramount. So other names you may see listed in credits are Paramount, Miramax, and they're all owned by CBS Viacom. Columbia Pictures, owned by Sony. Disney, Marvel, Pixar, the Weinstein Company, National Geographic are all owned by Walt Disney. And then you get into the Warner Brothers food chain of, people have heard of Warner Brothers. They produce lots of stuff. Have you ever heard of Castle Rock? Well, that's a different company. Nope. That was part of Warner Brothers. You watch the DC Comics movies. Oh, that's owned by Warner Brothers, who owns the comic books. New Line Cinema. They don't appear to be owned by anybody, but they're owned by Discovery.
Mm-hmm.
And then the really weird one is 20th Century Fox Studios, which changed their name to 20th Century Studios, and then separately 20th Century Fox. Those are owned by Disney. Weird but true. Universal Studios, well, guys that own the theme parks and such, they're owned by Comcast through NBC Universal. The one that was a bit surprising was I didn't know there were that many people watching it. The Hallmark Channel, owned by Crown Media Holdings, the same people that own the Hallmark card stores. So they made a lot of money in cards, and then they took that money and invested it in production of soap opera stuff, and then created their own channel, the Hallmark Channel, which came out as a basic cable channel. They made lots of millions of dollars, and then created their own streaming channel for their own content. So Hallmark Channel. And then, of course, the British Broadcasting Corporation owns BBC Films, their own production company. The one that's gone private is Lionsgate Entertainment. They used to be affiliated with HBO, and they do a lot of stuff for them, but now they're a separate company. They're owned by an investment fund called MHR. And then outside the US, you might have seen some things that, were programs from Canada or Europe, and you see Canal Plus. That's Channel Plus, and that's owned by Vivendi SE. Well, yeah, that's over in Europe, but Vivendi, aren't they a phone company? Well, yeah, they do mobile phones too, but nothing to do with like vending machines. That's just lesser known companies that you might have seen are Village Roadshow Pictures. You remember all the Matrix stuff? That was all Village Roadshow Pictures. They're owned by a company down in Australia called Village Roadshow. So they're kind of like all in one. You remember the old Rat Pack and the original Dune movie?
Yeah.
There's two guys that own that, Brett Ratner and James Packer. And so now it's just called Rat Pack Dune Entertainment. So when the Dune movie comes out and you see, wasn't there somebody over in Europe that did that stuff? Well, now that intellectual property is all owned by Rat Pack Dune. And if you remember some, in the late 70s through mid 80s, there were some TV shows, and you saw they were Legendary Entertainment. That's owned by two companies called Wanda Group and Apollo. And then similarly, there was something called Relativity Media. They're owned by a company called Ultra B Holdings. So whenever you watch a program and you see the credits, part of following the food source is who created it, who owns it, and how's it distributed, and that's how you go to watch it. And I know it's a mess, and it's up to consumers to deal with this. Yeah. So where does all this stuff get created? Well, obviously Hollywood. But did you know that there's huge production facilities in Atlanta, or just outside of Atlanta, Georgia, and in New York City, in one of the suburbs of New York City? So the largest, controlling about 52% of worldwide production facilities, is in Burbank, Culver City area in California. But the largest single soundstage, is in Germany. So when you see the Star Wars big, elaborate, scenes and sound stages, that's actually done in Germany.
Huh.
Pinewood Studios, known for doing all of the BBC and the James Bond stuff, they have the second largest soundstage. They're in the UK. In New York City, in Brooklyn, there's these Steiner Studios. You have these people that they make a little money and they go, well, I don't want to get in the actual production of things, but what if I just create the facilities and they pay me to use them? So they're outfitting facilities. They just take big warehouses and make them into sound stages.
Wasn't that like Tanglewood?
Yes,
Or-
yes. They're smaller, but in Ontario and British Columbia, there's a bunch of small companies that are all trying to band together to make one big conglomerate. Tyler Perry owns a lot of studio space around Atlanta, Georgia. So there are programs like some of the Stargate episodes and such that actually their soundstage was a Tyler Perry studio in Atlanta, Georgia. But there's tons of companies around the planet that are either separate companies or subsidiaries that do the special effects, the graphics, the animation, the sound editing, the titling, the front and ending titles, the post editing, the post processing, preparing for distributing. And then there's another lower level food chain of all this stuff, which is the stuff you need to run the show: catering, costuming, makeup and hair, weapons, all kinds of vehicles, aircraft, military, because the production companies don't want to own that stuff all the time. They just pay to, use it when they need it and then not own it. Don't want the assets. So have you ever had a program pulled off the air when you were watching it? You were
Yeah.
watching a particular program, like, I occasionally like to watch NCIS Los Angeles. Well, Berlanti is the company that makes it, and it's sold to Paramount, for CBS, for Viacom, and the CBS Viacom food chain didn't want to pay for it anymore. They didn't want to pay for the distribution rights. So it didn't matter whether there were advertisers willing to pay for it. The company distributing it onto CBS lost their shine to it and didn't want it anymore. So it goes away. If you remember, there was some superhero kinds of stuff like Supergirl that was on one network and then was suddenly on another network. Well, that was because they could still find advertising money, but the company that was distributing it on their channel didn't want it anymore, so it hopped over to another channel. So that kind of thing still happens. But actors want more money every year. So if you see, an actor that's popular in a particular show, like something on Amazon or Netflix, and after 3 or 4 years, the actors want a lot more money and they want to be executive producers to make even more money. And so how do you solve that problem? Well, you just axe the series. It's in its 4th year, done. Or it's limited run. It'll have 2 to 4 episodes and you'll never see it again. So now you know why these things are limited run, or the plug just gets pulled from them because they don't like paying for it. Or you have content that's popular, but something goes on with somebody, producer, director, actor, and you don't want the PR nightmare of it. So just pull the plug on the program.
Is that what happened to the Bat Girl thing or Batwoman thing recently?
No, that one was for finance purposes. They didn't think they were going to get the movie draw that they anticipated to cover its costs. So they wrote it off. If you ever saw the movie The Producers, they were trying to do that. They were trying to, we created this thing, but we're not going to make any money off of it, so we'll take it as a tax write-off. So in the separation from AT&T over to Discovery, the Batwoman, Batgirl movie got lost in the asset transfer, as they just struck that as a write-down.
Right.
If you remember the program House of Cards on Netflix, they had a problem with one of the actors, PR issue. So they just, kill him off and keep her in the program, and it didn't last that many seasons afterwards. Or really popular content like Wednesday Addams. And because they had a problem, not with the woman that played Wednesday Addams, but with another guy on the program that he was kind of a PR nightmare and just pulled the whole program. That seems weird. If you watch the latest Flash movie, they had a problem with Ezra Miller because he got arrested for some stuff, and they want to cut him out of the loop. Or a certain actor who wanted to play Superman who wanted more money than they thought he was worth, so let's go get us another Superman.
Yeah.
Just business. So this one, it fell to me as I was affected by this. I enjoyed watching The Orville, future space science fiction, kind of like a Star Trek light or a Star Trek with a little comedy. Great. It was originally on Fox free broadcast TV channel, not Fox News, but the Fox TV channel. And I watched it on that. And then they said, in order for us to have more money to do a really bang up job with the writing and the production and the animation and graphics, it's going to move from free on Fox, and you could watch it the next day afterwards on Hulu if you were a Hulu subscriber, but they took it off of free TV and put it only on Hulu. So if you weren't subscribed to Hulu, no The Orville for you. Fine. And then Disney bought Fox and moved the Orville to Hulu and then removed it from Fox. So even if you were watching Fox, you could no longer watch the Orville, not even the reruns. So it went from free to streaming to pay to watch it. Okay. And what people don't realize is that Hulu and Disney Plus have different contractual relationships with the content on different parts of the planet. So over in Europe, you couldn't watch The Orville on Hulu. You could only watch it on Disney Plus. I'm now considering, well, if you're going to take The Orville and move it over to Disney, I'm already a Disney subscriber. So as soon as the last season of Only Murders in the Building is no longer on Hulu, I'll cancel my Hulu, and that's savings per month that I can spend on Peacock. Yeah. But the current rumor is there will not be a fourth season of The Orville. Apparently, the viewer count didn't match its cost coverage of the third season, and Seth MacFarlane, the executive producer and lead actor, is otherwise occupied. In other words, they didn't want to pay him the money he wanted, and in the meantime, he went and got a gig that would pay him the money he wanted. So it's up to the consumers to fend for themselves. This is a teaser. This one also struck me as, so you're watching a program on something like the Sci-Fi Network, and that's great. You're watching Resident Alien. You watch the first season of Resident Alien, and then it's Universal NBC property owned by Comcast Infinity. And then in order to increase the popularity of Peacock, they moved it over to Peacock, even the free tier. Sounded great. And then all of a sudden, they made some episodes no longer available to the free tier. And then when the second season came out, none of the second season was available for the free tier. And then all of a sudden, they took all of the first season episodes and say, they're now behind the paywall. So you'd have to pay to watch Resident Alien, even last year's episodes on Peacock. It's just a way of, you get hooked on it, and now that you're hooked on it, give us some money. Obviously, if you're willing to pay $1.99 an episode, you can go watch whatever you want to watch on almost any place you want to watch it, because there's a little piece of cha-ching for basically the distribution company, the production company, the streaming channel you're watching on. Everybody gets a little cut of the pie on a per episode basis, and you don't get to retain it. So you pay your $1.99 and you can watch any individual episode of Resident Alien you want to watch on Google Play, Apple iTunes, Amazon, Vudu. But if you want to watch an entire season, it's cheaper to just go buy a Blu-ray of it. That's the only reason to keep Blu-ray. Now, this one was kind of a tease that you got to have this to get that. So as they move things onto networks, that network would be on a cable or a satellite. And then as it moved off to its own streaming service, now you've got to have this to get that. And when Showtime was first available as a streaming service, the only way you could watch it was if you had Comcast or DirecTV subscription to Showtime.
Right.
So it would actually link the two of them together on your device and say, because you're paying for Showtime on Comcast, you're allowed to watch your Showtime content on the Showtime app. But that was apparently for a fixed term. And as of cord cutting 2.0, Comcast lost that because Showtime is owned by a competitor to NBC called CBS Viacom. So if you had your Paramount Plus, you can now watch your Showtime content as bundled with your Paramount Plus. So even the balances of what you have to have in order to get what you want to see, that stuff's like up in the air. So if you have a TV and you don't have streaming stuff, how would you get into the world of streaming? First of all, don't think about having to buy a new TV. If the TV has at least an HDMI input, a spare input, doesn't have to be 4K, just a standard HD is fine. If you have a spare HDMI input, then, you know, for around $20 or less on certain discount periods, go get yourself an adapter that will connect into your internet service via Wi-Fi or LAN cable and plug into an HDMI port on your TV. That way you don't have to go buy a new TV until you really want to. You download the apps, you pay for your streaming services. If it's a free service, then you probably want to give it your email address and have a login, because that way it remembers your preferences and the programs you've watched and will let you know when new episodes show up. And here's a neat thing. There is an HDMI interface capability called CEM that allows you to use one remote control for that adapter, your dongle, your adapter for the streaming service, and it will control your TV. So it actually, you send your infrared remote or your wireless remote into the adapter, and then the adapter over the HDMI controls your TV, which is kind of cool. If you look at all the capabilities of your TV, you'll see that there's a reference to that. And there's probably an option you can set, because you might not want certain HDMI ports to control your TV and others to control it.
Mm-hmm.
But just know that it's out there.
Thank you.
There are services that relicense content, and they're based upon the adapter you're watching it on. So you may not be able to watch it from whatever adapter you're watching it on. So annually, the streaming companies pay Roku, Google, and Amazon for the ability to carry their streaming channel underneath Roku, Google, and Amazon. Local TV channels are now collecting together as conglomerates and saying these 200 local TV channels will not locally be available on Roku unless Roku pays Newsmax, an annual fee. And the adapter companies don't want to pay it. So you were watching, let's say, something on Comcast, and all of a sudden your local channels went away. That's because Comcast didn't want to pay Newsmax an annual subscription fee per subscriber. Or, Roku didn't want to pay to have that as an app installable on their adapter. And that's just business again. So you may find that local content or your favorite channel or your favorite streaming service might suddenly disappear. And then after money exchanges hands, it pops up again. Here's one that you might not be aware of. On your remote control, down towards the bottom of the remote control, depending upon what brand you bought, there are buttons that have names of streaming services or channels on them.
Mm-hmm.
The streaming service or channel pays for the rights to have that button on the remote control for that adapter. Roku is notorious for this. There might be millions of dollars per year for Roku to have a Netflix button on there, so you don't have to menu up, over, down. You just Netflix, and it takes you right to Netflix. Well, if you happen to have Amazon Alexa, you can verbally just tell Alexa, watch Netflix on Roku, and it will send the appropriate commands, out to the internet, back, and then back through your home network, over to the TV, to the adapter to make it, tune Netflix on Roku. Kind of cool that it all does that stuff, but it's also kind of convoluted that it does all that stuff. Washing hands behind the scenes. Some of those adapters, the program content providers don't want to support the older versions of them. So you may have an older version of a Roku or a Google streaming device that Disney doesn't want to support the older model anymore because they really want to get into that 4K content, because you pay extra per month for 4K and they want more people on 4K. So we're no longer going to support your original model Roku or your original model Amazon. So you got to go buy a new one. Now the cost for a new one, $20 or so. So it's not that big a deal. It's just the hassle of having to do it. And then reloading all your apps again. It's like buying a new mobile phone. So where do they get the advertising revenue? So you would watch things on broadcast TV and you'd watch commercials, and the local TV station would have its own source of ad revenue. And then the network programs you were watching on the local TV channel, the affiliate, they would have nationwide or regional, usually Eastern time zones, Western time zones, commercial ad money. So that was how TV made money. You watch content on cable and it's like, well, now you've got premium channels and basic cable, and the basic cable channels had their own advertising revenue source. But if you bought premium channels, no commercials, none, zip, nada. That was good. That was, cord cutting 1.0. The streaming channels came in initially and said, no commercials. You pay your fee, no commercials. Then it got more complicated. The service provider injected their own local and national commercials. I can remember watching programs on my Comcast cable TV service and all of a sudden see ads for local businesses at like the top of the hour and bottom of the hour on my HBO. Like, what kind of nonsense is that? I'm paying premium and I'm getting commercials? But that's because it was under their control and they just did that to make more revenue. So now you have things like you can watch YouTube for free, but there are commercials.
Yep.
If you watch YouTube Premium, then YouTube doesn't put on any commercials. But the YouTube content creators can have sponsors, so they have embedded commercials. But if the content creator signs on with the YouTube Red program, then you could subscribe to YouTube Red and you won't see YouTube commercials or content creator commercials. Now, that's not the same as YouTube TV, which is just a packaged TV service with 100 channels you don't want to watch. So where the money comes from for, to cover the cost of production and distribution is all over the map. All these things are beyond your control. It gets dissatisfying paying and not getting. So you have to, when you thought you were paying for no commercials and all of a sudden you see a commercial, it may be the content itself that's embedding its own commercials and your streaming provider has no control over that. When a streaming service suddenly arrives and they all arrive with the name of the company and plus on the end, like plus it's just a way of branding. It allows them to financially bucket it under a different corporate financial bucket. That's not Viacom. That's not even CBS. That's Paramount, but not the movie production company. That's Paramount plus the streaming company. So they bucket it. And the cord cutting 1.0, they tried to spend billions of dollars to, if I can get enough good content in, I can draw more people, more subscribers to my streaming service. And they burn, all the major ones burn through billions of dollars trying to corner the market and own all the subscribers that they could. But because the content was so shotgun blast, over all the different streaming services, people were stuck with, how little can I pay for streaming? If I can get the content I want on a free streaming service, that's where I'll be at. Well, that's going to change around based upon what they want for their return on investment. So you're now starting to see content that's not so great, series that are, limited duration or don't last but a couple of years. And, how are you going to get your next satisfaction off of paying for something? They could close streaming services and just write it down as a tax write-off. So here's, as I refer to it, acquisitions hell. So AT&T acquired years ago Warner Media, which got them a whole lot of different sorts of thing. And Warner Media was HBO, HBO Max or Cinemax, Warner Brothers, TBS, TNT, TCM, CNN, Headline News, Cartoon Network, Adult Swim, DC Comics and Movies, Looney Tunes cartoons, Hanna-Barbera, the Warner Music Group, and yes, AOL as well. So that was Warner Media. It was so much that AT&T didn't know what to do with it. They just saw it as, these things are, to sustain them, they're an infinite money sink, and the individual return on investment's not that great. So collectively, they were losing $1 billion a year. So how do they get rid of this boat anchor and go back to just like mobile phone services where they can make big margins? Discovery, which was a basic cable channel, had made a lot of money with Science Channel, Discovery Channel, TLC, Animal Planet, Food Network, Home and Garden, A&E, History, Lifetime, Oprah's Network, OWN, and the Travel Channel. They own a bunch of different channels, all of them basic cable, all of them getting a little slice per month from the likes of Comcast and the satellite providers. So they finally had enough tens of billions to take that boat anchor and buy it out from underneath AT&T. So Discovery. So you now have HBO Discovery, but HBO Max just is now Max because they're kind of trying to de-emphasize the HBO name to make it all just Discovery Networks. And also, even the satellite stuff, AT&T spun off DirecTV and UVerse Satellite into a separate company called TPG to let it fend for itself. So AT&T really wants to get back to just that communication services stuff. So yet to be answered is how much you're going to pay for what you've got versus what you will have. So if you were a subscriber to HBO and you were a subscriber to Discovery Plus, once the dust settles down from the merger, you don't want to pay for two services anymore. Will the stuff you used to watch on Discovery and all of its channels now be tucked under what they're calling Max? And for the majority, it is. But what they're going to create is a new flavor of Max that's at the free level. What's it going to be called? They don't quite know yet. Will you get it if you're an AT&T customer? Maybe, maybe not. CNN tried to create their own separate streaming pay service. That fell flat on its face in less than 2 months. So now they're trying to say, what if we split ourselves out completely from the Discovery family and offered our own streaming service, initially with free streaming, and then if we get a lot of people watching, we can slowly inch the tier ladder back up. CNN is probably going to be sold out from underneath the Discovery networks to try and do its own thing. And here we have the dogs and cats living together. When a program goes into reruns or syndication, anybody that comes along, if you pay them enough money, they're just in it to rake in the Benjamins off of a property they no longer have to pay for any production on. So sure, you'll be able to watch free stuff that was MGM that's owned by Amazon on Pluto, which is owned by Viacom Paramount until the contract expires. And the contract's first going to expire on Netflix. So you'll watch the Stargate stuff disappear from Netflix so they can put it on MGM Plus to draw to that while it's still on Pluto. And my head starts to hurt. So how it will all be packaged, we don't know. But Amazon has decided there seems to be an audience for Stargate. So they're trolling it out there as, if we show it on Amazon, but then make it as a draw to MGM Plus, and we get enough subscribers, there may be enough money to create some new Stargate content. But Amazon Studios is just a packaging company. They don't actually do the production part. So who are they going to farm that out to? Well, they haven't got a lot of money, so it can't be a big name company. So they wanted to farm it out to a smaller company. Like, there's a company actually called Penguin in a Parka. That's a small production company. They actually did some Stargate production. And there's also another company that you may have seen from Paramount and Star Trek called Bad Robot. They'll create content for a piece of the action. So maybe they're reasonably priced, whereas Paramount would be too expensive, because Paramount would see Amazon coming and go, "Oh, you think you're going to make money off of Stargate? You want to make a movie? Come see us." Now, but remember, you can still pay by the episode, $1.99 or whatever, and you can watch whatever content you want to watch from a number of different sources, dogs and cats living together. And the other thing is the strange bedfellows of who makes money off of it. So there's a streaming service called Vudu that does pay-per-view events and on-demand streaming. It's owned by Fandango Media, the same place you go buy your movie theater tickets from, which is collectively owned by Comcast, NBC Universal, and Discovery Warner Brothers. Huh. It's all about content ownership and revenue slicing. So you may find that slicing for Vudu actually reaches back around, and Vudu may be okay, you watched it in the theaters, it didn't last long. Prior to it showing up on your streaming service, it may show up on Vudu as a pay-per-view for a month or two to get, $9.95 pay-per-view on demand to watch it. And then after a couple of months, when it's no longer drawing, then it'll show up on your streaming service you're already paying for. And my comment on that is, wait it out. If you're not going to go watch it in the movie theater, but that's a Disney property, it's going to show up on Disney Plus in less than a year. So you just wait it out. Don't pay extra for it. Or if it's really big production something, I've heard that Oppenheimer is really great in IMAX. So when Oppenheimer comes out in the theaters, I may actually pay to go watch it in the IMAX theater at Mods, just for the effect.
Mm-hmm.
So, buy the entertainment you want to buy and the venue you want to buy it at, through the service you want to buy it at. Just be patient, grasshopper.
It's Avatar, The Way of the Water came out,
Yes.
and several others. They just show up all of a sudden, Dune.
Well, it didn't make enough money in the theaters to satisfy its appetite. So it shows up on, if you follow the food chain, down below the covers, it's a Disney property. And so it showed up on Disney.
Right.
But
sometimes,
wait a minute, wasn't that supposed to be an HBO property? Shouldn't it show up on HBO? No, it showed up on Disney.
Sometimes when you hit on demand, you'll see free shows, and one of those will show up. But it might not be high definition. It might be standard.
Right.
Yeah.
When HBO first started showing 4K programming, they didn't know how to show 4K programming in 2K because that's the best your adapter or your TV could do. So they would burst it in 4K, and then your adapter or your TV would downscale it to 2K and very quickly run out of content. And then so you would have dropouts and loss of connection, and eventually they learned to scale it in the app, so you don't have that problem anymore. But when I first started watching programs that were only in 4K on HBO, it was really painful because you couldn't watch a 2-hour movie in 2 hours. You watch a 2-hour movie in 3 hours because it would pause, drop out, reconnect, and sometimes when you acquire something, you might find that, hey, there's an audience for it. What do we do with it? how do we get the rights to it, and how do we resurrect it and do it? Well, HBO owned Warner Brothers. I'm sorry, AT&T owned Warner Brothers before selling it out to Discovery. One of the Warner Brothers properties was the Warner Brothers TV channel that was short-lived. One of the productions of that TV channel was Babylon 5. It was produced through a private Babylon 5 production company. They set up a company for 5 years, did 5 years, and shut down the company. So, hey, Babylon 5 has an audience. How does Discovery resurrect the series and make new content? Well, we don't want to spend the bucks if it's not there. So you start seeing on Max reruns of all the Babylon 5 episodes and see if there's an audience. Now that they've figured out there's an audience, let's do we do a movie? Do we do a streaming TV series? What do we do? And then they realized that about a third of the actors are no longer alive because it was made that long ago.
Yeah.
So now what do we do? Our existing remaining audience won't like it if we suddenly substitute in an unrecognized face for the recognized, you used to like them actor that's now deceased. What they're going to do is they're going to make a new series of Babylon 5 as a TV streaming series, but it's going to be adult animation because Warner owns DC and DC does comic animations. So there will be a Babylon 5. They don't know if it's going to be a whole new series or just like a reenacting of the original series, but it's going to come out through Warner Media underneath Discovery as an adult animation, not a cartoon for kids. Now that they've created it, how do they show it? How do they make the money off of it? Now, if they're going to spend the money to create it, what do they do? Well, it turns out they're trying to resurrect a Warner Brothers TV channel or a Warner Brothers streaming service. So it'll be another way of doing it. Now, do they first start showing it for free with commercials? Because that way their costs covered. Or do they show it on a pay tier? Because how do you balance out, I'm paying for Max, but there's this new thing I'd have to pay a smaller amount for per month called WBTV? Very confusing. They don't know what to do with it. So that may be the first success or the first lost cause of Discovery. Here's my example of you don't know what you've got until it's gone.
Yeah.
When AT&T, who owned HBO and Time Warner, you could follow the food chain of content for like Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter and The Matrix because Warner Brothers, by way of New Line Cinema, had their finger in all these pies. So when you saw like Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter, you'd watch it in a theater because that was where it was first released. But then the next thing you'd watch it on is HBO as a premium cable and satellite. And then you'd watch it on HBO Max for streaming. And then you could see it go downscale to TNT as an upscale basic cable channel with commercials. And then it would go on to TBS as a bottom scale basic cable channel with commercials. And then it would wind up on the Warner Brothers affiliates network as free broadcast TV with commercials. And then the company that would produce the DVD or Blu-ray would be Warner Home Entertainment. And the soundtrack for it would be Warner Music. And when you wanted to buy the book or the comic book for it, you'd buy it through Warner Publishing. And then when it finally became so long in the tooth that it was a classic, you'd watch it on Turner Classic Movies. So AT&T did not know how to manage all these revenue streams off of one property done once. So when they did the Lord of the Rings, all of these different avenues, every single one of them was more money off the program. So that was where they realized if we follow the food chain all the way to the bottom, we don't care if it costs us $200 million to make that, Lord of the Rings movie. We'll make it back eventually. And they do. And they still continue to show it. with commercials. And every time they do, there's more money to be made. Here's the problem with that. If I'm a writer and I write some content and it gets put out first run, and I get my salary for having done the first run, and then it goes into reruns on that same streaming service or channel, I'll get residuals, which is kind of like a monthly check. Well, if I do a lot of different programs, my monthly check can be my monthly income.
Yeah.
But if all of a sudden that content that I wrote winds up resold to a different streaming service, I'm cut out of the revenue chain.
Oh boy.
The distribution company is still making license money off of it, but I see no piece of the action. But you know what? The director and the executive producers still do. So you've heard of this writer's strike?
Yep.
Content that was made a while ago or that gets forced into different streaming services, the original content creators, the writers, got cut out of the loop.
Well, on top of that, from 20 episodes in a series to, say, 8 or 12.
Yes. And they're not getting paid any more per episode. The actors are, the production company is, but you as the screenplay or screenwriter aren't. The writer's strike is about the companies owning the rights, having paid for the production. They're still making lots of money off of it as it descends down the tiers and still has ad money. But the original people that wrote it, they're cut off at the knees as soon as it goes to the first licensing level after initial reruns. Why is it that this writer's strike doesn't take everything off the air? Because the writer's strike knowingly didn't start until a number of programs that they had worked on were already in the can as first run, which means even though they're on strike, they're still getting residuals. They got their initial revenue and they're still getting residuals off the things that are now being shown that were already in the can. So if you think they're on strike, how long can they do this for? They're not making any money. Oh, they're still making money. They're just not making as much money as they're deserved. So TV programs that are weekly, that have writers, let's say like Bill Maher, that's got to be off the air. TV programs that are animation, that are closer to first run, like a lot of Seth MacFarlane stuff, the writers are on strike. Seth is also a writer, so in commiseration with the Writers Guild, he's also shut down his animation companies because they have no content, no writers. When will this writer's strike end? Not anytime soon. Who becomes the winner of this writer's strike? It's all the content creators for which writing is just part of the job. There's no residuals, like me. The YouTube channel that you'll watch is not monetized, which means I don't make any money off of it. I write this content. It takes research time. I create it. I put it out there. I don't make any money off of it. But you know what? When YouTube shows a commercial, they make money off of it.
Monroe, that's where AI comes in.
Yeah.
Just like they do with music, AI will just start writing.
Yeah. Well, if you can get rid of the writers and have the computer do the writing for you, then if the writer's strike is too prolonged that it cuts into their food chain, then the production companies will just use AI as their writing source. All of the original content will wind up on places like YouTube, Curiosity Network, Nebula. And you know what? Those folks don't take like a hiatus. These well-heeled program executives and actors and personalities, you watch The Daily Show and how come they're not on Fridays? Well, because the contract of the guy that you see on the air, his contract says, I don't work Fridays or Saturdays or Sundays. Fine, but that means that I can't enjoy your program every day of the week. Well, I understand the weekends, but not 5 days a week? Nope. But I can go over to YouTube and there's hundreds of content providers that I can watch a new episode, a new one every single day, because they write content every single day, because their income source is not YouTube. Their income source is Patreon or YouTube registrations. So it's a new way to make money. So you're going to start to see that content is going to be created by whole new small shoestring companies. And when people start liking that content, they're going to stop watching the streaming channels in favor of things that don't cost them anything. Or, they can be a Patreon member at a couple of dollars a month and they're happy with that. But how does that tie into the actors' strike? Well, if the writers are going to get more money, they're going to get more residuals, longer residuals, then the actors want a piece of that pie too. The Actors Guild is waiting on what the Writers Guild gets as a result before they decide whether or not they're just going to go, give me a carbon copy of that, or we're going to go on strike. So here's my experiences. This was my first cord cutting 1.0. I did this a few years ago. I ditched Comcast cable TV, Infinity. My bill was $220 a month, and I had 4 premium channels plus like 400 music channels and 800 TV channels, most of which I didn't watch. It's like, that was a lot of money for like waste. But since I was employed by a company that was paying me a nice salary, it's just, if I wanted to watch something in the wee hours of the morning, because that's when I was awake, I just flip over and watch one of the premium channels or watch one of the basic channels. And I was happy paying that amount of money because don't have the wife and kids, houses paid for, cars paid for. So yeah, it was a lot of money, but it was disposable income. My AT&T landline phone, which was actually plain old telephone service over AT&T's voice over DSL, I was paying $60 a month for that. My landline internet access, which was 6 megabit DSL, I was paying $70 a month for that. I already had an AT&T mobile phone service account, so that doesn't even come in. I had that, still need that. But I found that, why don't I get my internet over 4G? It's something called fixed 4G or static 4G. I found that because I had a family plan, I could add another device interface for $20 a month. So instead of paying $60 for phone and $70 for internet, I could pay for $20 for 4G internet access at sometimes it's 10 megabits, sometimes it's 30 megabits. It all depends upon the load on the local 4G tower. But I'm fine with that. I did have to do a one-time purchase of $400 for my own 4G router, but I did that several years ago, so that's amortized off. For my telephone service, not mobile, but actually home phone line service, I pay $12 a month. So instead of $70 a month, instead of $60 a month for phone, I'm paying $12 a month for phone. Instead of $70 a month for internet access, I'm paying $20 a month for internet access. So when I first did my cord cutting for my packaged solution, because I thought I need one of those things, I went with Sling TV. It was nice. Price was right. It was about $60 a month, but it was missing the channels I wanted to watch. They had a lot of channels. They were just missing, initially back then, they were missing Sci-Fi Channel and MSNBC, which I watched then. I don't watch anymore. But when they didn't have it, I dropped Sling and I got AT&T DirecTV, which they called AT&T Now back then. And that was about $60 a month. Now it's $96 a month. And again, hundreds of channels that I don't watch. So that one's probably going to go away in my cord cutting 2.0.
3.0.
But I do Amazon Prime, which gets me Amazon streaming TV services. Plus, when I buy stuff online with Amazon, the shipping is included in the Prime price. So I don't worry about paying an extra so much money, and it arrives. There's a Prime delivery center 5 minutes from my house, so I can order something online at 2 o'clock in the morning, and it shows up at my house by 10 a.m. the next day.
They have Amazon Music too.
Yeah. Well, I use the music that comes in with Prime. I don't subscribe to the Amazon Unlimited, which is only another $8 a month, but I don't listen to music all that often. I have my own playlists that you can actually go online through the web interface to Amazon Prime and get Amazon Music, load them up into your playlist, and then call for them from Alexa. It's back on the consumer. You used to just pay a huge flat monthly fee and get what you get. Nowadays, if you want the freedom to only pay for what you want to pay for, you really got to pay attention to it. I would say get used to watching free streaming stuff with commercials. If you grew up on commercial TV, not a problem. And in fact,
you're saying to go to the bathroom, you know.
Yeah. Well, also, in fact, if you're watching Paramount Plus and you've got commercials because you're watching it at the lowest tier, there'll actually be skips. You can actually hit a little button shows up that says skip, and you can skip through the ads. So they don't mind making money off the ads, but once you get hooked on a feeling and you feel like the ads might be a burden, they can tease you to staying longer by skipping ads. Peacock doesn't do that yet, but my guess is Peacock's going to catch up with Paramount and offer that. As the fallback, hey, I've got broadcast antennas on my two TVs, the TV in the family room and work area, and the TV room and the TV in the bedroom. They both have those flat panel amplifiers.
That's what my brother did. They run from about $10 to $30, and you got all these local channels.
Yeah, well, like, you do now.
Well, they used to block you from that, and then they said, "Well, wait a minute. What if there is an emergency, like a hurricane or something? We have to have a way to be able to communicate to people that don't have all these cable services."
So yeah, I'd say if you're interested, spend the money. Don't just get the flat panel antenna. Get a little amplifier to go with it, because digital requires a stronger signal in order to decode it. But I just loved under 1.0 cord cutting, handing that Comcast back to, I stood in line to give them their box back. But I'd like to discontinue my service right here, right now, immediately. Immediately. And they still allowed me to use it until the end of the month. I gave you the damn box back. I can't use it anymore. The free to watch stuff that I watch is obviously YouTube. Watch a lot of the YouTube. Pluto TV. If you're into watching old Westerns, the Wild Wild West, if you like watching that, that's on Pluto. Sci-fi, lots of sci-fi stuff. Old dramas, they've got old TV channels on there like Dragnet and stuff like that. You can watch that. Pluto is great. It doesn't cost you anything per month. And if you don't mind it forgetting what you last watched and have to, do your own selections, you don't even need to give it an email address or a credit card. Amazon has their own free channel called Freevee. Weird thing here, Disney now has their own free streaming channel called ABC. Yeah, you get to watch ABC TV programs, but you also get to watch some amount of Disney content for no cost. Peacock has its free tier. Tubi, that's owned by Fox Corp, not the same as the Fox owned by Disney. The Roku channel, they made so much money off their adapters, they've got their own channel now. Sling wanted to get in the game, and rather than calling it Sling Free, they called it Free Stream. That's actually a problem, because how do I know Free Stream is Sling? Well, you got to go dig for that to find out like who's below the covers. That's confusing. If I watch Peacock at the free tier and it teases me with a program that with the little leaf icon, it's actually a tail feather from the Peacock icon that says, if you just pay for it, you can keep the exact same streaming app, and now you can watch that program. So I don't have to go out, come back in again, add another app. Switching from the free tier to the next tier up to the next tier up as you get hooked on the feeling, that's the right way to do it. Coming out with a different named service, that just seems like it's counterintuitive to growing your base. And this was interesting. There is a free streaming service called Crackle.
Yep.
And Crackle is, you remember the book series called Chicken Soup for the Soul?
Yep.
They made enough money off the books to have their own, to own their own streaming channel. And the company is called Chicken Soup for the Soul Entertainment. I just found it fascinating. So as I said, tiers, there's going to be free commercial standard resolution, pay per month, no commercial standard resolution. Then they'll get you up to 4K, but don't pay for the 4K if your TV can't show 4K, or if your internet is slower than 30 megabits. It's just going to be frustrating. So here's my cord cutting 2.0 plans. I'm going to rebalance everything. I'm going to continue with Max because Max now includes the Discovery stuff I used to pay for and the AMC stuff that I used to pay for. So my Max plus Discovery plus AMC price could actually go up a little, but also go down collectively. So fine. I'm going to cancel DirecTV. I just like paying for packaging that I don't like. That's going to be a big chunk of money. If Orville doesn't materialize a fourth season, and now that it's on Disney Plus, once the Only Murders in the Building are done, I'll probably cancel Hulu. That's $9 and change per month. I'll cancel Discovery Plus because I'm getting my Science Channel, History Channel, AMC, and my Doctor Who is now on Max. So yeah, $5.66 a month. I can flip that over to Peacock and go from the free tier to the pay tier, not the 4K tier, but just the pay tier. Curiously enough, it's $5.66 a month. This is with taxes. It's actually $4.99 a month with taxes. I might upgrade, if I really get into the 4K, I might upgrade my 4G mobile to 5G because they keep telling me, you've got an old 4G mobile phone. Don't you want a 5G phone? Well, see, I paid off my phone and I'm not paying per month on the phone hardware anymore. So got to get you hooked on the feeling again. Wouldn't you like a lovely 5G phone? It's only $1,000 and you'll pay for it $29 a month forever. Yeah. So I will wait until the 5G hardware price comes down and then I'll pay for a router again and don't know whose service or whose router I'll buy, but I can see 5G in my future. I'll be on the lookout for new tiers and lower prices with commercials because I don't mind the commercials. I will sign up for free streaming accounts. I don't mind giving them my email address if there's no credit card involved, just to retain my preferences. Because it's nice when a new episode comes out, you go to the app, you log in, you click OK and log into the app, and it comes up and goes, don't you want to see the newest episode that we just dropped of this thing that you like? Yes. And when you go down the list of all the current episodes, it shows you with a little indicator saying, you've already watched that one and that one and that one, but you haven't watched this one. So if you miss a couple of weeks, it shows you which ones you need to go back and watch. That's kind of nice. And all it costs you is, yeah, they've got your email address, but they probably do already anyway. I'm not going to pay per month for YouTube. No YouTube TV, don't want the package stuff. No YouTube Premium, I'm fine with the commercials. No YouTube Red, that just seems like playing the content creators against the consumers. And at the moment, ATSC version 3.0 upgrade is not in my future unless the government says, okay, much like they went from analog TV to digital TV and you just had to get it. Unless they do the same thing for 3.0, I'm probably not going to get 3.0 because once you get 3.0, the first channel of a digital bank is required to be free per the FCC. All the other channels on that bank, like dot 1, dot 2, dot 3, dot 4, dot 5, dot 6, they can charge you for all of those, and you have to pay for a subscription, and you get a key, a software key that you have to link into your ATSC 3.0 adapter. If you remember when satellite TV first came out, you had a card that had your key on it, or you would go to a website and download the latest key to get your satellite box updated. This is taking broadcast and doing the same sort of thing with it. So if you're going to get a smart TV going forward, I would say get the TV you want to get and get an external adapter. Do look for a TV that supports HDMI 2.1 or later, supports 4K, HDR, that's high dynamic range, that's better color and better contrast. Oh, I said CMC, it's actually CEC, Consumer Electronics Control, I think it is. CEC, not CMC. So that allows you to use one remote control to control your adapter and your TV. If the streaming apps change, you might have to buy a new adapter, but you shouldn't have to buy a new TV. 8K TVs, they're way down the road, and don't pay for 8K content until you can see 8K content. The volume TV manufacturers, they wanted to move from a single, they wanted to move from up to 5 HDMI ports, now down to 1 or 2 HDMI ports. But as the streaming services and adapters start to fan out, they have all their own, you may see TVs start to grow more HDMI ports. But TV manufacturing costs are going through the floor. That's why you can now see like 60-inch TVs for under $500 that are 4K. And that's just because they found ways to make them cheaper. The display panels, they can print as if they're giant pieces of paper with inkjet. So lots reduction in price. And look for that resolution to like go through the ceiling, because they're now doing quantum LEDs. The filters for quantum LEDs no longer need a red, green, and blue LED. They can just use white LEDs, and they make little tiny pools of red, green, and blue dyed particles. And the particles are at the 20 nanometer and smaller size little dots. And it might be 6 dots for a red, 3 dots for a green, and 2 dots for a blue. And that makes the little corrals that these dye dots are in different sizes. And that's how you get your different colors on your TV. So the LEDs went to a flat cost of just white. So expect TVs, when they get down to the quantum or micro LED level, to maybe eventually you don't buy a TV by size, you buy a TV by how many tiles of TV you want. And your TV comes in tiles of 1 foot by 1 foot. And how big do you want your TV? What aspect ratio do you want your TV is based upon how many tiles you hook together, and the tuner will be a separate box. Remember that brief point in time where TVs were dumb and your tuner was an external box, and then they embedded the tuner in the TV? It may become external again if tiles just get to be the cheapest way to make different TVs, because the manufacturers have to make various sizes and qualities of TVs. And if they can just make a panel and just sell you a quantity of panels, their production costs go through the floor. Because if you want a 120-inch TV, you just buy enough, you buy 10 by 10, you buy 100 panels. So the panels have to be really cheap. So you may hear of something called side broadcasting or rebroadcasting. This is how we get tied into the NASA TV and SpaceX stuff. If you're watching a live space launch on SpaceX's YouTube channel, that may be delayed by up to 30 seconds. So if you see the launch and then you're going to run outside and see the rocket's already gone by. That's because they have to do a lot of store forward satellite transmissions and such, and it's already done by the time you see it on the app. Then there's side broadcasting. This is where it's a live feed, or it's a 30-second delayed feed. But then what they'll do is they'll take the live feed and embed it in their own YouTube channel. So you'll see NASA Spaceflight, which is not NASA. They have a YouTube channel, and they'll show you a live launch. Or the Everyday Astronaut will have his own YouTube channel and cut through to a live launch. Then there's rebroadcasting, where the launch was shown on the live SpaceX or NASA TV channel, and then you want to watch it like 2 or 3 days later, and you can go to space.com or NASA TV and watch a rebroadcast in its entirety. Or you can watch the highlights reel. This is, if it's a ho-hum launch, this is how I'll watch it. I'll go watch Scott Manley. Anything about rockets, he's very informative and sometimes a hoot to watch because he'll, find the irony in some things. So Scott Manley, he's a good YouTube channel to watch. And if it's physicsy stuff that's involved in the launch of like the Euclid space probe or gravitational wave analysis through pulsars, you can see that on Dr. Becky's channel. She's actually a PhD physicist over at Cambridge University, England. Not Cambridge, Oxford. Oh, don't want to confuse the two. So how do you watch NASA channel and space launches? Well, let's see. There's a thing called the NASA channel. It's a streaming app. You can watch it on your smart TV, your tablet, your mobile phone, or the web interface on the computer. There's the NASA TV website, which is not the app, it's actually a website. NASA has its own channel on cable TV or satellite. Or you can watch NASA's YouTube channel. Or you can watch all the side broadcasting or rebroadcasting. The same thing holds true for SpaceX launches. You can watch them 30-second delayed live on YouTube. Or if it's a SpaceX launch under contract from NASA, you can watch it on NASA TV, and SpaceX will hold it back to watch it like a day later, delayed. So what about all those new upstart little launch companies? You'll find that they have their own YouTube channels, and that other YouTube channels will do side or excerpt broadcasting of those. So if you're looking for the guys that launch rockets from down in New Zealand, that's fun to watch. Or guys that attempt to launch things from Scotland or places in the UK, or launch them from airplanes, you'll find that they all have their own YouTube channels. So that's the best way to watch those. We're coming towards the end. So movie theater change might collapse due to lack of attendance. Right now, they just keep raising the price of attendance and selling it to you through service providers like Fandango. But you can't sustain that.
No.
Raising concession prices and reducing the employee headcount in the theaters, that's not going to go far, because if you need somebody to help you, where's the usher? Oh, they just got somebody behind the concession stand. They don't have ushers anymore. They have cleanup crew. And I really like this new approach they've got, where you pay the movie company, the movie theater company's chain for a flat price per month, assuming you're going to watch a number of movies in the theater per month. And if you don't watch them that month, they don't get the concession money from you, but they don't have to clean up behind you either. But they still pay the movie distribution company as if your butt was in the seat when it's not. So of late, you pay your close to $20 a head or $16 a head for senior prices. You go into a theater during the first week, the movie's in first run distribution, and you go, there's 4 people in this 500 seat theater. Where is everybody? Well, they've all paid their monthly flat price subscription, and they aren't there because they're not willing to pay the concession prices all the time. So yeah, there's a model there that they're going to have a problem with. Do be on the lookout for multiple tier streaming channels. If you want free and you don't mind the ads, stay on the free. Pay only what you need to pay. Don't pay for 4K if you don't have to. As the cost cutting, as they're stop bleeding the money, they're going to shut down some services. They're going to merge things like Hulu into Disney. And so just be aware that kind of thing is going to happen. And when it does, if you were paying for Disney and Hulu, you might save money. If you're using a free service, do sign up for it. It doesn't cost you a credit card or anything. They just got your email address for your login, and it retains your likes. And if you're really into it, upgrade from free to pay or to premium, rather than risk exposure to changing service names. So if you're subscribing to Amazon already, take a look at Pluto, because if something leaves Amazon, it'll probably show up on Pluto because the copyright is owned by Amazon. If you're watching something and you're not paying Peacock, you might have to pay Peacock for the next season or for reruns. Paramount's a good deal because they're adding the Showtime content. They're merging the two. And depending upon how long you've been a Paramount Plus subscriber, it may not cost you anything extra to get the Showtime content. Like I said, Disney Plus may be absorbing Hulu. Watch out for that. And don't pay for an ATSC 3.0 box to avoid potentially paying for services you shouldn't have to pay for. The weird loophole is that if you have an ATSC 2.0 box, the paid channels will be free. But if you have an ATSC 3.0 box, the paid channels will cost you money because it's only the ATSC 3.0 box that will encode and decode. Weird, but true. Yes, conclusions. I've got several more slides to go. Well, I've got a lot of history I had to look through. So my most important takeaway is it's all just a business. Consumer opinions vary. You know, you're not in charge. You're not the person in charge here. So you're the tail and the dog is wagging you. Cord cutting is a great way to save a lot of money per month. So if you've got cable or satellite as a package deal, and that package price as you retire starts to seem a bit hefty, do take a look at other offerings. If you're watching a package and you've got hundreds of things you don't watch or don't listen to, don't pay for them because streaming can make as much content as you want available very selectively, and it might be free or it might be low cost. If you like content, if you want to see it again and again, don't pay for a cloud purchase of it. Buy the media. Get yourself a Blu-ray player. They're not that expensive nowadays. Watch it that way. And when you're getting a streaming service or a package, things will change from time to time. It's just the new homework burden on consumers. Do set up a login so you can have it remember what you've watched on the free channels. I find myself watching lots of under 30-minute videos on YouTube for free. And YouTube is actually adding free movies with ads. So they've got a whole section on movies that they're not new. There may be some classic movies there, or they might be movies that are 5 years old, but you can watch it for free just because it's sitting there and you might want to watch it. And do watch out for those mergers and acquisitions to avoid getting the carpet pulled out from underneath you. Or there might be savings because things merge. And that's about me.
I have a question.
Yes.
And it's a multiple question. So let me finish the question.
Okay.
And then I'll listen. It used to hear all the time about ratings, and now you don't hear very much, but they're still out there. And I was wondering how, when you watch a TV program live on TV, and then they do ratings on that, and that, or versus that you could look at it on a streaming on demand later on.
Yep.
You watch the program, and then they count those by views. And then I don't know how many views are really like saying it's good or not. And then there's programs that are out there that that are free and don't have any commercials with them. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering how that compares to the other ones that do. And it just sort of like, well, how do they know? Because you talked about earlier about the box.
Yes, as the saying goes.
So as the
saying goes, it's all over the place. Because you're watching content through an app or through an interface, they can see what you watch. They can see if you watch it all the way to the end. Here's a weird thing. If you watch it all the way to the end, including all the credits until the credits run out, you probably fell asleep or went away and did something else, and they don't count that as a complete view. If you watch it until the credits start and then you switch to something else, they consider that you watched a full view.
Ah,
So the ratings are bupkis. This is the best way to describe it. It's, if you want to click a like on something and say, I really like that, that's kind of icing on the cake for them. What they really do is you watch it through an interface that they're getting analytical data from. They watch what you watch and that you watch it all the way through to the end. That's all they care about. Now, are they making the money off of it? Yeah, because they can see that analytics set through their entire subscriber base. So it doesn't matter whether it's first run, rerun, for free or whatever. They see who's watching everything. And they go, we seem to have a shift. People that don't want to pay for something seem to be watching sci-fi stuff or Westerns or spy dramas or whatever. So they'll add more in there and they'll get new commercials to show with it. Or they'll add it as free with no commercials to get a draw, to pump up the volume, so to speak. So if you see that, popcorn has a rating of 98% on something, like, and where did it get that from? Well, the people that want to say something, say something. The people that would rather not be part of a survey aren't part of the survey, and they can either like it or not like it. So views is a better way of saying, was that popular or not? Likes, dislikes, reviews, ratings, they're not worth as much as they used to be.
I know that they still do the ratings for like the Tonight shows, like all the late night shows. They'll say,
yes,
who's got the best ratings
yep.
Between them, and they vary. It's like
yep.
one will be up for so many weeks, and then another one will be up, and it'll change around. But I don't know how they do that compared to views. I understand views a little bit better
yep.
than do ratings at this point, because
ratings are not ratings so much as they are viewership. How many eyeballs were on that episode of The Tonight Show? What is your share, your market share? And that's how they dictate the ratings for broadcast television, is how many eyeballs were watching that.
So they can do that differently today. They can tell whoever is watching a TV show, they can tell who's watching.
Well,
I mean, because before you had to put in a code or a box or say that you were willing to.
Years ago, there was a box called a Nielsen ratings box, and that's gone into actually being a part of the TV sets. So if you say, I
didn't realize that. You're saying now that box is part of anybody's TV?
Yes. Yes.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Yes.
Thank you. That answers everything.
If you own a TV that has a Roku player in it, or you own a TV that has an Apple player in it, what you watch and how long you watch it gets reported back to those companies, even if you never subscribe to an app. It kind of cuts the Nielsen folks out of the loop. Because they were never more than a sampling.
That's how they compare the Tonight shows, is by that box.
That's how they used to do it. That's how they used to do all the broadcast TV programs.
Yep.
It was
But it's part of the TV now, though. You're saying it's
just an embedded part of the software in the TV.
So that's still how they're doing it, is through that embedded part in the TV.
Yeah. So if you buy a Google TV, or you buy an Amazon TV, or you buy a Roku TV, or you buy an Apple TV, I guarantee there's something in there reporting back to Mother One what you watch and how long you watch that program. Even if it's just switching the tuner.
I noticed
they have their eyes on you because it's all about the Benjamins.
Yeah, one thing that Netflix does is when they determine whether they're going to renew a show, is if people will see all the episodes, then
Yes.
it's more likely that they'll renew the show. But if some people quit watching the episode, they may just drop it.
Yeah. Well, it's even reruns. I know one of the things involved the Orville was they moved the Orville from Hulu to Disney Plus, just to see if they could get more people joining Disney Plus, paying for the subscription for Disney Plus, as the Orville was a draw. And what they found out was when they did that, a lot of people left Hulu because that was the only reason they were watching and subscribing to Hulu.
Yep.
It could actually hurt them.
Yep. And one of the things I noticed also, you know, with the talk shows and stuff, they've gone off the air pretty much because of the writer's strike,
Yes.
except for The View. And The View, they kind of come up with their own material.
That's called a reality TV show. It is unscripted.
I know.
Yeah.
Another thing I miss, we got our TV and we were enjoying three-dimensional channels. And you don't see those anymore.
That's a technology that was too much for the audience.
Too much for the audience?
Yes. Remember, initially you had to have the shutter glasses where
Yeah,
it would do the 3D like this. And then eventually you got the polarization where the
Yep.
picture would do that.
Yep.
And you could either look or not look through whichever lens was the opposite polarization. And that kind of content required, if you're going to have a 3D program on your TV, it required you to have the 3D glasses.
Right.
But if you didn't have the 3D glasses and you put the 3D content on your TV,
yeah,
it was wrong. Something's wrong with my TV. I can't watch it. So it was a burden for those people that weren't watching it with glasses, and it was a burden to wear the glasses for the people that did want to watch it. So
yeah.
It was a technology. It did work. They did improve it, but
Yeah,
there just wasn't a large enough audience for it.
Yeah, Xfinity used to have, a couple channels like that, and
Yep.
they're completely gone. So, you can.
Well, I mean, even 3D in movies is no longer done as a 3D movie.
Right.
If a movie seems as though it could get some additional revenue by being in 2 theater rooms at the same time, one in 2D and one in 3D for more money, they'll actually post-process a 2D movie into 3D. And the computer can do that automatically. So it'll actually create split channels. And just like right now, you cannot see the background behind me because it's created based upon luminance, a depth perception.
Uh-huh.
I can do that and create 3D. So if I can artificially create a depth perception, and as I close in the light here, you can see that some of the background becomes available. So that what they do in movie production is a more advanced form of that same thing. They can take a movie that was produced in 2D and create the 2 channels for 3D, and they'll use the phase shuttering, and you'll go to the theater and you'll get a pair of glasses that just look like kind of mild sunglasses.
Yep.
One lens is polarized this way, and the other lens is polarized this way. And the screen actually rapidly, at about 70 times a second, flips the polarization display back and forth. And that's how you see the 3D. Your brain gets tricked into it being 3D.
Sort of gone the way of laser discs.
Yes, that was, I own one of those things. It's in another room now, but I owned a laser disc that was 3D capable. So I had the wired glasses, and I owned a Commodore Amiga that was 3D capable. So I have the 3D wired glasses. Used to watch content like that.
Are you going to go for the Apple Vision?
I'm not going to give Apple that much money for something I know doesn't cost that much.
Right.
Sure, they have to recover their development costs, but
Yeah,
had they come in at like $800 or $900, they probably couldn't make them fast enough. But
Yeah.
given that it's several $1,000s, read the current press releases from the last couple of days. Apple is already reducing their manufacturing unit expectations because they don't expect to sell as many of them.
they're also demanding that customers make an appointment at the
Yes.
Apple.
Well, if you remember the 3D glasses that Microsoft had,
Yep.
where you could actually see out of the glasses, and they would graphically put 3D content in front of the background. The idea was, if you're an aircraft mechanic working on a military jet, you don't want to have all that big pile of documentation near you. You can be working on the jet and wearing gloves that would sense your movement. And as you're working on the jet, it would be overlaying graphics that would show you the blueprints, details, wiring connections, or whatever of what you were doing. That was their return on investment value for their, their altered reality display. The problem was it required so much computer horsepower to do it, nobody could afford it. The glasses were cheap enough, but the computer performance necessary to do it was too expensive. The computer performance came up, price went down, but by then the glasses weren't that meaningful for Microsoft. But Apple's trying it again. Google tried it. You remember when you could take your Samsung phone and put it inside the holder and get yourself?
Had one of those.
Yeah,
Had one of those.
I've got one of those. It's right over there.
Yeah,
Haven't used it in years.
Yeah. I gave it away to kids.
The problem with that is Google wanted so much money for developers to pay them to get content that would work in their environment that nobody wanted to create any new apps.
Yeah.
So,
True that.
yes, you can have technology. The technology can work, but if the market package is not right, it can be very short-lived. And big companies like Microsoft and Apple and Google, if something's not a winner, if it doesn't immediately quarter the marketplace and make them billions, they'll just jerk the rug out from underneath you. Okay. Any comments or questions? Because we're just past the bewitching hour.
So all these streaming services you're talking about, you need to have a smart TV to access them.
Or you need to have an adapter connected to your existing TV that has an HDMI port, a spare HDMI port on it. You know, the Amazon days are coming up, and you can probably get an Amazon adapter for cheap, or you can get a Roku adapter at Walmart for cheap, and then you can use that with your existing TV if you have a spare HDMI port.
A spare HDMI port.
HDMI.
Okay.
High definition multimedia interface. HDMI. Okay.
Right now,
Okay. Anything else before we close?
oh, thanks a
you,
lot. It
everyone.
was good. It was very good.
Was
Thank you,
very
everyone.
interesting.
And
Yeah, I learned a lot.
To observe.
bye, guys.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Monroe.
Yeah,
Thank
this-
you.
Bye.